Alrighty, everybody ready to roll? Let's see, UK, nice, ceramic mugs, excellent. How many of you joining us? Well, first of all, I'm Kyle Houchins. I'm a tech and a trainer for McNeil, and this is Getting Started Rhino for Windows. We're going to build this little canister today, and it seems like actually a pretty simple model, but there's one little piece of here that we're going to focus on, which is this snapping latch. So there's going to be a little bit of mechanical figurizing that we're going to do. Figurizing, is that a word? I think it is now. But how many of you have joined us for one of these getting started videos in the past? If you haven't, these are a little different than most software videos that you've seen. These are live, they're unrehearsed. The idea is you're just getting started in Rhino, or you're just have kind of maybe had it for a little bit and you want to push your skills a little, or maybe you're staring at a blank screen and trying to figure out which buttons to push to make something. The whole goal of these is to build a little pretty simple model, although if you've seen some of these, some of them go off into the weeds and we get a little bit more complicated, but I tried specifically to do this one pretty simple. So the idea behind this is we're going to build this model. We're going to talk about it. I have not built this model before. As you can see, the sketch I just did this morning before we were getting ready to roll here. And the idea is I want to put myself in the same position that you are in. If somebody walks into your office, tosses a sketch on your desk and says, "Hey, build this for me, will you?" So I simulated that process myself. I did this sketch and I threw it on my own desk and I said, "Build this for me, will you?" And I said, "Why don't you build it yourself?" And he said, "Well, I don't do that kind of work. You do that kind of work." And these are the conversations you have when you work by yourself. But anyway, I digress. Let's get started with this. And the idea is that we're gonna build this model. And if we analyze it a little bit, first of all, let me just get rid of this, and we'll talk about from the very beginning how we get started. I always start with a reference image, right? And whether it's a really sloppy sketch, if you've seen some of my other videos, you've seen some of the sketches are pretty marginal. Sometimes it's just a chicken scratchings on a page to have a conversation with myself, to lay out some basic proportions. Sometimes it's a little bit more finished. Sometimes it's an orthographic like we have now. Other times it's a photograph. Other times it's what we like to refer to as rich verbal, where someone walks into your office and tells you what they want you to do and waves their hands around and says, "Got it?" And you look at them with a blank stare and say, "Sure, man." So all these starting points have to kind of be condensed down into something that's useful. And so anytime I have a situation where I'm going to start a model, I'll either start with photographic reference or a sketch. And whether it's a sketch I do myself or it's a sketch I take from somebody else, we have to get it into Rhino. And the way we're going to do that is to use the picture frame command. And I'm going to just bring this in and find it on my desktop. And I'm going to just hold down Shift while I click, and then I hold down Shift and I place it in the scene, right? And the cool thing about picture frame is if I go to a different view, right? This is just an object. It's just a plane with an image mapped onto it. If you were to go to the materials section, you could actually see this material. It says picture frame material. And the cool thing about this is it can be used exactly like any other reference object or any other actual object. Forget about the fact that it's got an image on it for right now. If I wanted to copy this, I can just drag, tap Alt with Gumball. I can rotate it. I can scale it. I can do all sorts of things with it. That in the past, things like background bitmap, we don't like to talk about background bitmap anymore because it's not very good. Picture frame is kind of like the way that we get everything into Rhino. You can copy it, delete it, scale it, rotate it, do all that kind of stuff, just like you would a normal object. And so if I go to my front view, you can see that I have this sketch placed in the scene, and it's not located, it's not scaled, it's not anything, right? I don't know how big it is, I don't know where it is in space. So the first thing I need to do is I need to actually kind of drop its transparency, or actually raise its transparency, I guess, if I'm being accurate, to the point where I can actually see my modeling window through it. I can't see my grid through it right now, and if I were to draw, if I were to draw a curve over this, especially in the areas where there's a lot of contrast, I can't see my sketch lines, so it doesn't make any, it's difficult to work with. So if I pick this and I go to the materials, or I go to the properties here, and I roll down and I go to the materials section, you can see right in here, there's a Rhino material assigned to this. This material is used by one object, and if I hit the edit button, it brings up the world's biggest material editor. And then I roll down here to transparency, and I just start dragging this up. And you can see in the preview window, you can actually see what's happening. And I like to go somewhere in the 80s, 90s, 95, something like that, maybe even a little higher for this one. And then when you've got it the way you want it, just go ahead and close the material editor, and you can see right away the effect of this in the modeling window. Now, this is obviously a fairly symmetrical object. Excuse me, I'm going to mute and clear my throat for a second. Hang on. All right. Fairly symmetrical object in terms of, the main structure. Obviously, this stuff is asymmetrical, but we want to build around 0. So I'm going to take this and just locate it somewhere where I feel like this is vaguely centered, right? And it might be, we can do a couple of tricks to figure out exactly whether it's centered or not. We can take this and draw a rectangle from center at 0, and we can just kind of match this, and you can see that I'm a little bit off, so I'm going to slide this over a little bit, and there's a little ish factor here, so we're going to just kind of go for it. So this is vaguely located around the center. Now I need to decide how big this thing is. I'm going to say that this thing is about, I don't know, let's call it like 7 inches tall. For those of you who are outside of the US, I apologize for the nitwittery of using inches over the metric system. We're backwards in a lot of ways. Units is one of them. So I'm going to hit 0. I'm going to say 7.5. If you were working in centimeters or millimeters or whatever you wanted to work in, this is the same process. Okay. So you can see that at 7.5 inches, I'm way small here. So I'm going to click this. I'm going to scale from 0. And then I'm going to just shift drag until it matches that line, right? So that's my image. It's placed in the scene. I know it's scaled correctly. I can delete this. There might be a more elegant way to do that, but if you've watched any of my videos, elegance not necessarily how I roll. So let's take this now. The last thing that we need to do is, it's kind of right in the center of our modeling window. If I were to build an object here, especially like if I did something like a cylinder, which we're going to do, you can see that especially in the shaded view, this starts to become a little bit of a problem, right? The image is like bisecting it. I can't see the image anymore, and it's kind of a pain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pick this, and I'm going to just slide it straight back in space using gumball, so it's outside the modeling window. And if I was setting up a reference cube, like if I had a front view, a right view, a side view, top view, bottom view, I'd do the same thing. So I would actually take this and I would slide this outside of the modeling window way over here, so that when I build my object, it's in here, and it doesn't intersect any of the image planes. And the cool thing about that is, because we can layer stack this, if I go over to my layer stack, I can take this image and I can change it to this layer. And then I have the ability to be able to turn it on and off or lock it, which is useful so that if I'm modeling, I don't pick it. If I had alternate views, if I had a right or a left or top or bottom, I would actually create different layers for each image. And somebody asked me once, well, why don't you put all the images on the same layer? Well, if I was working specifically on the front view, or if I was in perspective and I wanted to focus on the front view, I don't want all this other visual clutter in the scene. So I just have that so I can turn them on or off. If I take this one and assigned it to a different layer, then I would have the ability to control these independently, which I personally find useful. So obviously don't need this one, so we're going to pick it and hit 0 and just delete. And then we're pretty much set up to get going. All right. How much experience does everybody have here? Are you just getting started with Rhino? Are you in it for a while? Have you built lots of models, stuff like that? The other thing I wanted to mention about these sessions is they're intended to be interactive. This is very informal. The reason we do this is to make mistakes, have conversations, break things. If something breaks along the way in this video, I'm not going to panic. I'm going to actually, I'm actually happy that happened, because I want to talk about what happened and how to fix it, instead of just throwing you to the wolves and doing a Julia Childs video where, we mix all the ingredients and then we turn around and pull it out of the oven and it's done. We don't do that here. So I want you to see how the sausage is made. I want you to see the good, bad, and the ugly. If something in Rhino breaks, I'm going to pause, talk about why it broke, at least if I can figure it out, and what we can do about it and how to get around it. And hopefully, if it's a bug, I can actually stop and make a note and get it off to the developers and have them fix it. So like I said, little different than a lot of other software videos that you've seen. So please feel free, if you see something in here and you're like, wait a minute, what was that? Go ahead and say that. I'll stop. We'll go back and explain it. If you have questions about something or something doesn't make sense, hit the chat, tell me whoa, ask a question, and let's go forward from there. All right. So this is intended to be not really a class, not really a demo, but more of a kind of an interactive session where, I guess it's an interactive demo, I guess we'd like to call it. So anyways, the other thing is these videos are all recorded on, are all recorded, and they're posted on our Vimeo page. And I'll show you that at the end of the video where the Vimeo stuff is located. But if you bail out early, if you just go to Vimeo and search for Rhino tutorials, you'll get our page. There's a couple of hundred videos there of all sorts of stuff, including the getting started stuff that you can take a peek through. All right. So let's analyze this thing and talk about like how we're gonna build it. So obviously we've got this main canister, which is a piece of cake. We can either do that with a cylinder and fillet it, or we can do it with a revolve and build the fillet into it. It's got a lid that probably steps down and goes inside. There's probably some sort of rubber gasket in between the two of these. There's a steel band that comes around here that has a rivet. It has a little axle. It has a little plate that keeps the band together. It's got this wire retaining clip that comes around here. And then it's got this over center latch, which we'll talk about, how to build this. We'll actually build it in its rested position so that we know it functions. The way these things work is as you pull, this actually stretches this down just a little bit, and then it pops over center, and then that releases. So we'll talk a little bit about how to build this. Rhino doesn't have IK or parametrics or anything like that built into it, but with a little bit of common sense, we can build stuff like this and actually have it be functional and effective. So, all right. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that we're going to do is we'll focus on the main canister. It's kind of nice to get through something and feel like you're actually accomplishing something. So let's start at 0, and I'm just going to type 0, enter. I'm going to hold down the shift key, and I'm going to use my cursor to line up. See how my cursor, I can pull it away when I hold the shift key. I'm going to use the cursor, and I'm going to line up the crosshair right with the edge of that, and I'm going to click, and then I'm going to shift drag and come straight up to the top. And I'm going to click again. And this, I'm actually going to assume that this has a tiny rolled edge on it. So if I zoom in here, I'm going to click here, and then we'll build the little rolled edge as well. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's do it with a circle. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to hold down my Alt key. My O snaps, by the way, I have my O snaps disabled. If I click up here, this is where all your O snaps live. there's a disable at the bottom. And I like that because as I'm going, if I don't have that disabled, see how it's going snap, 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 snap as I go through the scene. I don't like that. I like to enable which snaps I want enabled, and then I hit disable all and hide this. And the reason I do that is now I can travel through the scene without having it go snapping crazy on me. And all I have to do to re-enable it is to hold down the Alt key. So if I hold down Alt, I can snap to the end of this. I can shift drag out to about what I think the rolled edge should be. And then I'll probably just pull it up just a tiny little bit. And then we have to decide, is this a rendering model or is this a functional model? If this is a functional model, then we're probably going to want to go ahead and build the wall thickness into this. And we would simply do that by starting from here. Let's go ahead and make it a functional model. Why not? And we'll just do this. And I'm going to snap that to 0. Even though that's incorrect, I'm going to turn my points on. I'm going to turn my points on. I'm going to grab this point, and then I will use gumball to snap it up here. Now, if your gumball doesn't behave the way that mine just did, right? If you pull it up here and try to use an O snap to flatten this out and it doesn't work, there's a setting in gumball, and it's called snappy dragging. And if we bring the gumball up and click on the bunny tail here, it's smooth dragging or snappy dragging. I think smooth dragging is the default. Switch that to snappy dragging and your gumball will respond to O snaps. I always run that way because I find it super convenient. All right, so we know that this is snapped over here, so we know this is a straight line. We know we're at 0. So let's go ahead and actually we don't have to close it off because that'll just be a singularity. So let's clean this up at the top. So let's pick all this stuff. And let's just trim it. Drag select everything and then join. So we've got an open curve, but that's okay because we're going to revolve around here and this will be a singularity. So let's go ahead and get some geometry rolling. So if I pick this, I go to my revolve. I'm going to start at 0 because we started building at 0. And if you read up here in the command line, see it says end of revolve axis or press enter to use the C-plane Z. The C-plane is this grid down here. This is your construction plane. The Z, if I look down at my triad down in the corner, right, this is Y, this is X, and Z is coming straight up. So I do want to use that, so I'm just going to hit enter. And then I want a full circle, so I'm going to just do full circle. And that gives me my canister. Now, the first thing you'll notice is that I screwed up and revolved it too early because this has a fillet on the bottom. So I can either fix that now or I can go back and fix my original curve. And I think I'm going to fix my original curve. So let's delete that and then let's go back and let's add a fillet to this. In the first fillet, I'm going to say this is probably a single unit, which is fine. So let's pick that. It's too much, so let's undo. Right click to repeat fillet curve, and let's say it's 0.5. Just narrow it down like that. And that's pretty darn close. So the inside one, I don't know exactly what the distance is here. I can measure it. 0.08. So the inside one should be 0.5 minus 0.08. So let's do, we can even do that. We can even do a little math in the corner, right? Actually, it should let us do that. Does it not? Poop. All right, fine. So we'll do, what is it, 4.2. 4.2. Get the inside one. There we go. So that's our fillets on the inside and the outside. I don't know how much, I don't know if any of you noticed how much I was sweating having to do that math on the fly. Art school. It's funny, I've been working at McNeil for a while, and everybody at McNeil is a programmer of some sort. I'm like one of only 2 people in the company that went to art school, and Pascal is the other one. And Pascal kind of floats around on a cloud of blue light. So I always feel like the dumbest kid in the room, but but none of them can draw. That's my ace in the hole. So we've got our first piece here, and you can see that we kind of nailed it, right? It looks good. If I go to wireframe, everything's kind of lining up perfectly. So let's go ahead and build the other chunks. Now this thing is going to be, the lid is going to be the same thing, right? And we're going to want to build this with just a tiny little gap to roll through here so that we can put a little gasket on there. We don't have the exact shape, but you know, we're designers, we should be able to figure it out, right? So I'm going to start this kind of out here, and you would ask why I didn't start in the center, because if I started at the center, if I started at 0, click down here, I can do something like, and I do this often, I'll actually build a little reference line that I can snap to. Sometimes that's nice. Otherwise, I'll just overbuild it, build the entire thing, and then slice it off, and I know that I'm at 0. But since we drew a center line, let's go ahead and work from that. So I'm going to just pull this out here, hold down Shift. Again, I'm going to line up my cursor to know where the corner is. I'm going to come down here, same thing, and I'm going to give myself a little space, and I'm going to come in here like this, and then I'm going to give this a little taper like that, and then we'll come back to center, hold down Shift and Alt, and that nails it down there. So we want a little fillet in here, so let's go ahead and throw that in. That's going to be too big. So let's do it again. Repeat fillet curve, right click. Let's do 0.15. I could measure this, but who has time for that? We'll just do it over and over again until it works correctly. And then let's go ahead and fillet this one up here. That's pretty close. I'm getting lucky that these are like kind of nailing. Now, the way I drew this, or should I say the way the designer drew this, let's blame the terrible designer. It was me. I didn't take into account the thickness of the gasket on this, so I'm gonna just override the sketch a little bit and then provide myself with the room in order to make that gasket. I am gonna fillet the bottom of that, so that's nice. And then it looks like, did I overshoot the center line? I did, so let's fix that. I thought I snapped it, but maybe I didn't. And then this has a groove in the center for this wire, so let's go ahead and draw that. And I'm going to do that with a circle, snap to here, and then I'm going to just drag this out so that it has a little bit more room than what's needed for the circle. And I'm going to actually trim this. And then I'm also going to trim this. And I'm going to join all this up. All right, everybody with me still? Nobody's run for the door yet? All right, let's go to the perspective view. Let's go ahead and revolve this. And we're going to start the revolve axis at 0 just like we did before, and we're going to use the C-plane Z axis. So we're going to hit enter again, and then we want a full circle. So we're going to type U. See how this is underlined here? U enter. And then that way we don't have to like go click, 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 click. We can just do it all from the keyboard. All right. So let's take a look at what we've got. So we've got our top, we've got our bottom. If we go to the front view and we go to wireframe, we're still looking pretty good. So let's go ahead and build the gasket. And the gasket, I'm going to go ahead and steal some of this curve. And I'm going to type invert, which selects everything but that, and then hide. And what it does is it inverts the selection. I picked this, it inverted and picked everything else and deselected this, and then it hid everything else, right? I have that set up on a hotkey, by the way. So I just wanted to walk you through that because I'm going to do it as I go through. And if we look at preferences, aliases, you can actually see I have this set up, and that is the command right there, is underscore invert space underscore hide. You have to have space in between it because space is enter in the aliases. And aliases, if you haven't used these before, these are little custom things that you can set up for hotkeys. All right, and I'll give you a 2-second spiel on setting up hotkeys. If you set up your own hotkeys, use the aliases instead of the keyboard commands. The keyboard commands require Control, Option, Command, Shift, stuff like that, plus a key. So do me a favor, stick your thumb on the Command key and reach over with your middle finger to the I key, okay, on either side. Feel that stretch, especially if you're right-handed and you're doing this with your left hand. Feel that stretch on the back of your hand. You don't ever want that for a hotkey, especially for something that you use a lot. When I started my career, I used a different program that shall remain unnamed, and there was a feature for relocating the pivot point, and it was like Command I or Control I or something like that. And because I'm right-handed, that reach was very, very long. I ended up with a really bad RSI injury to my hand, and actually ended up almost having to get surgery. Fortunately, I found a really good PT that helped me out. But don't, if you do this for a living, it's really not a joke. Please, please, please take care of your hands. If you set up hotkeys and you're finding that your hand is sore, especially as you age, set up hotkeys that work so that you don't have to stretch. Anytime you feel that stretch in the back of your hand or that strain in the back of your hand, if you do that a couple hundred times a session, you are going to be injured. So let's not do that. All right, so when I set up my hotkeys, if you look at it, I'm gonna divest here for a second. Look at this, and I have my hotkeys set up like gumball on is G, gumball toggle is GG. I have gumball relocate set up GR. And if you look at the keyboard, all those keys are very close together. And the nice thing about aliases is you don't have to have the modifier key. So like invert hide, which I do all the time, is set up II. So I just tap II with my left hand, no stretching involved, and then I right click or I hit the space bar to hit enter, and it's very kind of hand friendly. All right. All right, that's my sermon is now over. So let's take this curve, and I'm going to first of all, I'm going to kill all the history on this because I was modeling with history, and if I edit this curve, it's going to screw up my surface. So I have a hotkey set up for history purge, and the command is actually history purge, and then it has an option for all. And what that does is that disconnects the curve from the surface. If I were to modify this, it would screw up my surface. So I'm going to explode this, and then I'm actually going to take this section right here and join it, and then I'm going to offset it, and I'm going to use that to make my gasket. And right here. All right, and I'm going to offset that about, I don't know, 0.04, 0.05, something like that. And I want it to be capped so that when it goes out, the cap is either none, flat, or round. And I want it to have flat caps because it's going to be a piece of, there's a piece of rubber that goes in here. And this is probably long. Let's bring everything back with the show command. So this is kind of long, and it's also not thick enough. So let's redo that. I'm going to explode this, and I'm going to get rid of these. And let's offset it again. If I right click, I can go to my list. Offset curve is still in there. Actually, I got to join it up first. Curve, curve. There we go. And so let's join those. And then if we right click, we can go back to our list and say offset curve. It's not quite long enough. See that? It needs to be longer. So let's do this. Let's do 0.08. And that's too long. So 6.5. That's just enough to be squishy, but not enough to be crazy. So let's go ahead and do that. We could just do it line to line and do 0.06. That's probably pretty good. I think if I was going to actually make this in real life, I would make it a little oversized, like 0.08, but it wouldn't render. It would look weird in a rendering if I did that. So let's do 0.06. Let's leave it like that. And then if I wanted to, I could even You know, I could even modify this curve a little bit and draw, you know, a custom gasket in there, but I think that's probably going to be all right. I feel like this is too long though, so let's hack this off, and let's hack it off kind of right about here. And I'm just going to go like this, and then I want to show you a command called curve Boolean. If you haven't seen this, it's really cool. It's a way to do all sorts of like complicated trims, and this isn't a super complicated trim, but basically if I just click inside this, it does the trimming and all that stuff automatically. So the demo that I like to do with this is if I did a gear, and we did a array polar. Let's do 25 of these. If I wanted to trim this all out and have it, you know, I would have to pick this, and then I would have to go trim, 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 trim. That's a pain, right? If I use curve Boolean, I can click outside of this because I want to keep the exterior shape of this, and check that out. With one click, I get all of that at one time. So that's a really nice feature of curve Boolean. It works awesome if you're doing logos and you're doing lots of drawing with logos and stuff like that. It's a very cool way to clean up logos super quick. So either click inside of what you want to keep, or click outside if you want to keep the exterior border. All right, so let's revolve this guy. And I can do this from the command line. The start of the axis is, actually I need to go to the perspective view first, because this is based off the C-plane. And my C-plane has swapped on me, so let's fix that. Set C-plane world top. I want that to be world top because I want to revolve around 0. So let's pick this guy. Revolve 0, enter, enter. U enter, and that gives us our gasket. Revolve is kind of a satisfying tool because it's easy and you get cool results, and it's historically enabled. So we've got our gasket, we've got our part, we've got our base. Now we need to just start putting the pieces together. We're doing all right. 9:30. This should, by the way, we should be able to finish this thing, I would say, an hour, hour and a half tops. So if you're time sensitive, just so you know what we're dealing with, that's where we're going to go. All right, so the next thing I want to do is I want to create the band around here, and I want this to fit really tightly. I want this to fit, you know, I want this to be tight to the object. So I can do a couple of things. I can pull an isoparam off of this, which allows me to actually pull a curve off of a surface, or I could project a curve onto the surface. But let's pull an isoparam. I think that's probably a good way to start. And I know for a fact then that these two curves fit exactly to this surface. So if I pick this, invert hide, and then I go to the top view, I know that this is made up of two bands, right? There's two bands. It's got a rivet through it. It's pulled apart at the back here, and it's pushed together at the front here. So let's design that. And I'm going to do that using a rectangle from the center. And I do that because it's super easy and I know it's symmetrically correct. So I'm going to pull this way and trim here. And then I'm going to scale this, and I'm going to pull this way, and I'm going to trim here. And the nice thing is because I've got, and I should have actually copied it because it would have been set up nicely already, but if I take these guys and then trim here, and then explode, that's my curves for the front. And then all I have to do is add this one to the back. And I'm going to just copy by drag, alt tap, and then snap it there using Gumball. And those are my two band curve. So I'm going to take these and join them. And now we're going to do some cool gumball tricks. If I go back to perspective, I'm going to take this. These are now reference curves. I don't really care about those, except for the fact that these aren't touching. So let's fix that. So I'm going to drag these up with gumball, and I'm going to snap them here. And then let's join this up. There we go. See how useful that snappy dragging mode is? You guys used that before? So let's grab this, and then I'm going to start dragging, and I'm going to hold down Command. And see when I hold down Command, I don't know if you can see that out at the edges. See how that little line starts to show up as I hold and release Command? As I bring that down, I can actually use that to extrude surfaces. So drag first, then hold down Command, then let go of the drag, let go of Command. There's a little finger jujitsu involved there if you haven't done it. So now we've got our band. If I bring this thing back, you can see it's exactly on the surface. It's exactly kind of where I want it to be and all that kind of stuff, right? So let's take this, and I'm just going to take both of these. I think it'll let me do both of them at the same time. If we go to the solid menu and we say solid offset, see how the arrows are pointing out? Let's do this 0.08 as far as wall thickness is concerned. And we'll just offset those out to make our little bands. Okay, should all be joined up. There's a little bit of messiness. See this up here? How this is 3 surfaces. There's a cleanup command there if we use merge all faces. And I pick these two. If it can do it, it will replace anything that's coplanar. It'll clean up that planar face, which makes it a little bit nicer for filleting and stuff like that. Okay, it's a nice, kind of a cool little tool. All right, so there's a little plate on the back of this thing that makes up the that holds these 2 bands together. It slides over it and keeps these from peeling apart, and then the wire goes through here. So let's make that, and we're going to make that using gumball. So we're going to shift command click. That's called a sub-object selection, right? This is a poly surface, and I can't pick parts of a poly surface unless I say shift command click. Now I'm going to start dragging this, and I'm not going to let go until I tap Alt. And the little plus shows up. Then I let go, and you can see I can actually break a surface off of that. Now I'm going to take this, and I'm going to drag this to the center, and I actually need a center reference point, so I'm going to just draw a little curve from here to here. And I'm going to drag this till it matches the midpoint, if I can find it. There you go, midpoint. So I know that's centered. Scale 1, drag it in. It's almost like cheating, right? Because we're doing modeling without really doing any modeling. And then I'm going to drag this down, and I'm going to use gumball to snap it to the mid there. So I know it's centered top and bottom. Drag, hold down command, and I extrude that into a little box. All right. Last thing we're going to do is do a little Boolean difference. We're going to take this object, and we're going to remove these 2. Make sure you don't have delete input checked. Right click, and now we've got that little plate. All right, now if we were actually building this, if this was going to go to a printer or something like that, we would want to build a little bit of wiggle room in there. Otherwise, you're going to be sanding like crazy trying to get these things to fit. But for brevity and speed's sake, I'm going to just go ahead and roll like this. So I'm going to stick this in here, and that is kind of the back, the holder of our band. And then if we want to clean this up, this entire thing, let's grab all of this. And we want this to look nice if we were to render it. If we leave sharp edges like this, it's gonna render, and it's gonna look a little harsh. It's gonna look a little fakey CG. So let's throw some fillets on this entire thing. So I'm gonna just come down here to variable radius fillet. I'm gonna select this entire model, and I'm gonna just put a tiny fillet on it, like 0.01. and that should that should get us there. We can preview it to see what it looks like. I think that's going to work out fine. It's just going to knock the edges off of everything. And then we'll just say done, and it'll run it. And it looks like it worked out all right. If we shade this, see how it's just got the nice little light on the edges, makes it look kind of nice and realistic. If we didn't have that, you wouldn't get this little light, this little light catcher on the edge, and your rendering should look super dead, super fake. We don't want that. All right, so we've got this part. We're doing great. We've only got 2 more parts to make. We've only got the wire surround and the little clasp, a couple of rivets. All right. So this, it looks like I didn't quite pull this far enough. So let's see if we can use sub-object selection, because this actually needs to be out here. If I do Shift Command and drag select the end of this, because this is all degree 1 geometry, if you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. I should be able to stretch this out to here. I'm actually going to go a little farther than I need. And in that case, it allowed me to do that. So that's a sub-object selection and modification. Now, we've got a little bit of a thing to deal with here, and that's okay. We can manage that. I'm not too concerned about it. we can modify that to get our piece in there. I'm not too concerned about it. But that gives us what we need. I can hack this off, anywhere I need, but our pivot is up here, so I need to actually add something to that. Now, the simplest way to do that would be to have done it before we did the fillet. So let's undo the fillet. Shift Command click, or Shift Command drag. Let's pull this out and watch this. If I Shift Command drag on a corner, let's do this not in rendered mode, but shaded mode. I can drag this back. And then if I wanted to actually modify this up here, I could take this, put a split right here. Actually, I can do it in 2 places. I love this. Oop, got to copy it. Tap Alt. Oh, behave yourself. Tap Alt. There we go. Once the plus shows up, you're good. And then I'm going to split this. So check this out. I'm going to split both of these with these curves, which breaks it into 3 pieces. Then I'm going to join it back up, and you're like, what are you doing? That doesn't make any sense. Stick with me. Check this out. Shift Command click, Shift Control click, go back to front view. Ta-da! Check that out. Shift Command drag that corner. I was just able to modify that. Now, the reason this worked well is because all of this geometry is planar. Okay, if this was curved geometry, if it was degree 3 geometry, this would be a little bit more of a problem. Let's clean it up with Merge All Faces. And you can see that it cleans it all back up. Then we can go back, put our fillets on. If we had our fillets on this to start with, that would be kind of a difficult get. And if we render this, we're all good. Okay? Everybody like that? Anybody have done sub-object selection before? It's pretty rad. All right, so let's do our wire. Yeah, right. It's nice. It's if you haven't played with that before, there's a really great video by Brian James called Hello Gumball. If you just Google Brian James Hello Gumball, it'll pop up, and it talks about all of Gumball's superpowers, and there's some really cool stuff in there. All right, so last thing we need to do is just make our latch, our bail, and our wire, and we should be able to pull that off basically the same way we did the the band, right? So let's do this with an extract ISO curve. Even though these are intended to be like, you know, really kind of basic videos, I try to throw as many commands in there for doing stuff as I can. So I'm going to center this. I'm going to use this snapping to the midpoint, and then I'm going to hide everything again except for that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my lines first because I want to nail those down, even though they're not like perfectly in the right position just yet. I want to get them the right profile because I can always deal with that later. So that's my profile. Now, granted, this is going to have to move over and this is going to have to move over, but at least I know where my profile is. So I'm going to split this. Actually, let's do that. Let's move these over. And if I bring my part back, I can see exactly where these need to go. So if I pull this over like this, and I want to leave enough room for it to be able to, it has to turn left at the bottom as well. So I can even draw that in like that. And then in the front, this one probably, I don't know, somewhere in here, something like that. I'm going to use a command called cell CRV, which is cell curve, select curve, and then my isolate command. And then I'm going to just go and pick all the components that I need and then isolate again. And that gives me just what I need there. If I go to the top view, I don't know why my viewport just switched to gray. That's weird. Let me fix that because I don't like that. I think it's in preferences. It says it's white. Oh, you know why? Duh, because I'm in rendered mode. See? I make the mistakes so you don't have to. All right, there we go. So here's my curves, and that's kind of where I need them to be laid out. I know that this is going to be actually one piece of wire. It comes out here, it comes around, comes over here, and then joins in the front. But I only need half of it, so I'm going to turn on the points for both of these, and I'm going to just pull this forward, pull that forward, and then going to, maybe let's even do this. Let's mirror these around 0, hold down Shift, and then I can connect these guys, and then I can trim everything. And that saves me a little fussing later. Okay, so that is, if we go to 3D space, that's my shape for my bale. Now, if I'm thinking about this, right, when we pulled this curve, that was lying right on the surface. And that actually isn't what we want. We want the center of that wire. We want the center line of the wire rolling around, not the edge of the wire, right? Because if we're going to pipe this, it's going to be too far inside. So let's figure out how big our wire needs to be. And we can simply do that just by doing this. We'll just snap to something here and say like that, and then we'll measure it. Sorry, do Woo. So it's 0.12. Let's make it kind of a logical. Let's make it 0.1. Actually, 0.12 is fine. Never mind. We'll leave it 0.12. So in order to do 0.12, we have to offset 0.006, right? Am I doing my math correctly? Because I have to get this curve to be 0.006 bigger, right? Am I doing that right? Somebody correct me if I'm screwing up my math. Don't let me look stupid on tape. Although I guess some would argue that if I screwed it up already, I already look stupid on tape, but whatever. I'm fine with it. All right, so let's offset this 0.06, right? Is that right? No, 0.006. Like that? No, 0.06. Everybody's laughing at me now. You really can't do math. Yes. Good thing he can draw. Let's put it that way. All right, so I capped these. They don't need to be capped, so let's explode them. It helps to be unembarrassable when you do things live, so that's that's actually how I got this job. I used to be the demo guy for T-splines, and I don't know if you've seen any of my T-splines videos, but I used to be the demo guy for T-splines, and I actually got the job because the original guy they had to do the job, they took him to SIGGRAPH, and he had a panic attack about public speaking so badly that he actually ended up in the hospital. So they decided instead of torturing the poor guy, they would find somebody else that could do the presentation work. And so that's actually how I got my job, is by being publicly shameless. So I don't care if you don't. I don't care if you know I can't do math. My daughter, who's a math phenom, is like sitting there with her head in her hands right now going, oh God, people are going to know we're related. Fortunately, she takes after my wife. All right, so this one I'm going to do this a much smaller radius down here because this is supposed to be really tight. So let's do 0.005 because this has to kind of, whoa, what is that? Something has gone awry. Let's fix that. Let's grab the points here. Not quite sure how that went south on me, but let's turn these points on. And let's grab this, and we'll just gumball them straight up and use snappy dragging to flatten them out. That's a little better. Oh, no, wait. No, that's supposed to be like that. Isn't it? Yeah, it is. Duh. Okay. So, all right. Boy. Hi, welcome to Getting Started, Rhino. I'm your instructor. Oh, yes. Nothing like looking like an idiot live. That's all right. All right, now that's a little bit too big, so let's undo that, and let's do it a little smaller. Now, you notice that what history did over here, that I don't want it to do that, so I'm going to kill the history. HP enter, that's my hotkey for killing history. And let's do 0.1 here. That's okay. I'm good with that. There we go. So that should be everything that we need to do. Maybe I'll fill it this one too, because I want this one to come up. Now, the one thing I have to remember, whatever my smallest fillet is, which was what, 0.12, I can't really exceed that with the diameter of my pipe because it will self-intersect. So that should be all one curve. Let's pipe it. We'll see how badly I bodged the math here. If I do 0.12 diameter, looks like I squeaked it out. Let's see if it fits. Oh man, all that self-deprecation, and I actually pulled it off. I mean, see, I knew exactly what I was doing. Oh man. All right, So let's go ahead and let's Boolean these holes out. And if we're being honest, this actually, these tabs need to be in a little farther, or these bales need to be out a little bit. At the end of the day, I'll probably just cheat these, and we can do that if I just delete this. And I will probably, if I had to save this model, I would probably do something like this. I would hack this probably here. Everybody's going, oh, cheater. I don't care. Judge me. Judge me at will. I don't care. Probably move this in like that. And then I'd probably draw a line from center so that I'd have something to line it up with. Right? Remember how I said I was going to break stuff, and I'll show you how to fix it. And then I would take this and I would just slide this until it kind of matches right there. And then to clean this up, I would probably just, if I'm being honest, I would probably just go ahead and use a blend surface. Auto chain, all of that together. And I would just do it positional. Actually, would do a tangent. Why not? Let's preview it. Like it never happened. Yeah, see, it almost looks like we knew what we were doing. Almost. I'm not advocating lying, cheating, and stealing. I'm just saying it's always worked for me. That great Hunter S. Thompson quote. I don't recommend illicit drugs, sex, and alcohol, but it's always worked for me. All right, so let's go ahead and finish this up. Let's do a little Boolean subtract here. Boolean difference from this and this. Take out that. Our hole gets plopped in there. Now, if you're being really, actually, no, I guess it isn't. It's just held in there with spring tension. I was going to say, I think these might be mushroomed over, and you could even go crazy and mushroom that over if you wanted to, but let's not get crazy. All right, so I'm going to save this because I haven't done it yet, and even though Rhino is fairly stable on this machine, as the saying goes, faith may save your soul, but only Control S will save your data. So let's not tempt fate. All right, so let's build the last piece of this. And this thing, there's two ways to do this. We could just do this as a straight, like, folded piece of metal, or we could actually, get fancy and try and build a little twist in here. Either way, I'm gonna do this I'm going to build it as simply as possible, and then I'm going to use a little cheat to add a little form to it at the end. So let's draw this. All right, and that's a little sharp. I'm going to fix it. There we go. Trim. All right, so there's our shape. Join that up. I'm going to go to the top view, and I'm going to bring it out to about the thickness that I want it to be. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to extrude this from the center. Let's do extrude curve, extrude planar curve, and we're going to do it both sides, and I'm going to pull it out like that, because that gives me enough space to hog out the center of it. And then I'm going to just hog out the center of it. So let's do that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to snap at the midpoint here just because I know where it is. And then I'll move this later. So that's about the wall thickness I want. I'm going to take this and bring it in here like this. Let's isolate everything. So I've got a curve and I've got a block, right? If I just show you what I've got going on here. And I want to hog out the center of this. So I'm actually going to rotate this thing. Like that. Bring it up here. And then I'm going to draw a curve. Everybody's like, what are you doing? Bear with me. I haven't completely lost my mind, despite what you might think. And let's do a sweep one. Say OK. And if we preview it to just see how everything looks, and if we go to shaded mode, that helps. We can see that we've kind of built a little cutter there, right? So I'm going to take this and cap it, and then I'm going to just do a Boolean subtract. Boolean difference, sorry if I'm using the right diction. There we go. So there's our wall thickness part. There might be different ways to do that, but that's kind of the simplest way that I like to do it. So let's go ahead and add some fillets to this to soften it up a little bit. And I'm going to do this in a couple of pieces because I want different shaped fillets. And the goal of the fillets, the rule is always start with the biggest one. So we're going to start 0.1. And I don't know whether that's the right size or not. I'm just arbitrarily picking these. 0.1, let's see. That's probably a little big. So let's do set all and do 0.05. Well, let's do 0.08. Let's do it right. That's probably still a little big, if I'm being fussy. That preview mode is kind of nice because you can kind of see what it's going to look like. So I'm going to call that good. And it blew through there. And the reason it blew through there is because 0.06 was too big to fit in this spot. So let's undo it. Let's redo it. And I am going to do this with 0.6 again, but I'm going to change these down here to 0.03 and see how that now fits. And we'll just do a variable fillet down this thing. Better. See there? The inside, I'm not even going to worry about the inside. I'm going to just leave it. I'm going to leave it sharp. I don't care about that. Actually, I lied. I do care about it. Let's see what we can do. I think 0.06 is going to be way too big. It's going to fail out the bottom. Actually, no, it didn't. I'm surprised. Wow. Okay, fine. But it doesn't match the outside radius, so let's undo it. I'm just surprised it worked. I thought it would blow out of the inside. So let's do set all. 0.035. We're doing on time. We're doing good. All right. So there's that. Now to fill it off the rest of the stuff, I'm going to knock these off, but I'm going to do that bigger. Now we have to remember that our smallest fillet so far is 0.035. Because when we go to knock the edges off other stuff, we have to remember that number. And I think I'm going to do just a really tiny fillet on the rest of the stuff, like 0.01. And I'm going to do this edge. Let's see if I get away with this. There's a singularity down at the bottom here that it might not like this down here, but we'll see. Let's see what we get away with. It might blow up down here, but if it does, then it's fine. Yeah, see how that's coming apart down there? So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to eliminate this inside fillet. And I'm just going to do this on the outside. Keep in mind that when you print something, if you don't have to have a fillet on something for like a rendering or something like that, don't bother putting them in. And I know that's kind of counterintuitive to maybe what you've heard in the past, but if you can skip fillets when you're modeling, go ahead and do it, because when you print this stuff, the second you hit it with sandpaper, you're going to get your fillets for free. So just kind of keep that in mind. Like if you have to have fillets, do your fillets. If you don't have to have fillets, skip them and don't do them. When I'm modeling something, if I know it's going to go to a printer, or if I know it's going to come off of a CNC and like Ren board or something like that, I'll completely skip the fillets and I'll just sand them in later. And everybody's like, that's sloppy, and I'm like, no, that's fast. Let's build our rivets. So sphere center radius, I'm going to snap it to the edge of this so that I know it's located correctly. And then I'm going to pull it into the right spot. Like that. Let's isolate these two pieces. See how that located it nicely for me? And I'm going to flatten this out a little bit because it doesn't need to be that crazy. And then I'm going to trim it. I could do a Boolean, but I want just a tiny little bit of space in here to kind of simulate whatever the production tolerance is. I don't think this is long enough. There we go. Sometimes in wireframe, see how it looked? It looked like it was extending through it, but it wasn't, because the wireframe didn't show the entire part. So there we go. Cap, mirror, isolate that. Watch this, you're gonna like this. Pick, Shift Command click, start dragging, tap Alt. And I'm gonna move this using the between. If you haven't seen this, you'll love this. Let's go to move. This is the object to move. Where am I going to move it from? Here. Where am I going to move it to? B, enter. First point, here. Second point, here. Oh, centered. You like that? You want me to do it again? Anybody go, what? Let's do it again. Move. Select object to move, this. Enter. Point to move from, pick a spot, convenient spot. In this case, I'm going to pick the quad at the top. Point to move to, B, enter. First point. Snap at the quad here, snap at the quad here, and it drops it right down in the center. Now the cool thing about this is I can shift drag, make it smaller, and then I can extrude planar surface. Let's do the surface. Where do you live? Where do you live? There we go. Extrude close, extrude solid, extrude surface. Would you use this to make a handle on a mug? You could. I'm going to do this both sides. Move between is super powerful. And I can't join it because it's disjointed stuff, so I'm going to just Boolean it together, and then I'm going to get rid of. So there's my rivet. I just need to Boolean it into the other stuff. So Boolean difference from this, this, and this using that. Ta-da! If I relocate my gumball to here, I can test it, make sure it rotates the way I want. All right, so now the last thing we need to do is make the bail, right? And that should be a piece of cake. So let's go to shaded. Let's go to wireframe. I'm going to select all my curves and hide them. And I just basically need to draw a curve from here to here, right? To determine that distance. I need to go from right. Actually, let's do this. Let's do this kind of precisely. Everybody's like, why start now? I'm going to draw this using a circle, and I'm going to draw the circle so that it lays right in there, okay? Because that's actually what it would have to do. Then I'm going to draw the line from the center point of the circle down here like that. And then I'm going to take this circle and copy it, drag, Alt-Tab, hold down Alt and snap to the bottom. And then I know I've got my locations and stuff, right? So now I just have to design the bail, which means I go to my top view. Is this helping, by the way? Do you guys, is this like, are you seeing stuff in here that's useful? I don't want to like just blow everybody into pieces. So then I know if I connect this line and this one, and then I need to draw a line from here through this, kind of like that. And this needs to go on the other side too, so mirror at 0. Select curves, isolate. So that's my bail design. And then let's go ahead and throw our fillets in here. So 0.1 is probably a decent fillet for this. Although, if I'm being precise, I should have figured out what this curve distance is. But I'm going to slide this down here and snap it to the end. Now, when I pipe this, and there's a tool in here for just making pipes. Actually, we already did it, so it's not. You're not like, really? It's the same one we used before. But I'm going to use the round caps one because I want this to have a nice, round end on it. And let's get all of these curves joined up. Really? There's a pipe tool? Exactly like the one you showed us before? Yes. I like you guys. You're snarky. All right, so let's roll that. And it should, if we've done everything correctly, it should be the same diameter of our curve, which it is. Bring this all back. Let's go to shaded view and see what it looks like. What glorious disaster have we made? Actually, it looks pretty good. Last thing we need to do is Boolean difference that using that. Now, the only thing that we need to determine, and actually I think we're good because this bail is going to swing this way. Now, because Rhino doesn't have any inverse kinematics or anything like that in it, it's not like we can't go through and like actually test this to see whether it works. But what we can do is we can rotate, and it doesn't show us collisions, but we can just, if we go to wireframe, we can make sure that as that translates out, see how we know that little pokey thing at the end isn't going to swing. So we know that that's pretty good. So we know that as this goes out, this is going to travel around. It's not going to interfere with any. I was afraid that it was going to hit this at some point, and it's not. So we're good. So this should actually work the way it settles out. So let's save this. Actually, we don't need to save because in Rhino, once you've saved the original file on the Mac side, it saves continuously. So actually, we don't need to save. Let's put our curves on a layer. We are almost done, by the way, if you're getting impatient or you have to pee or something like that. Move, hide. Let's go to shaded view. All right, so we've got this thing pretty much settled out, and the only thing that we need to do left, I'm actually going to hide the image, is we can throw a few materials on it and do some renderings. Now, version 5, the rendering stuff in it is really kind of kindergarten style. If you guys have been using Mac Rhino for a while, you know that the rendering stuff is kind of ish. But let's do the best we can. Version 6, when it comes out, and it should come out soon, I guess is the official answer. I can't get any more specific than that, but you can try the whip, by the way. If you have version 5 and you own it, if you go to rhino3d.com download, you can download the whip of 6, and 6 has cycles built in Raytrace mode, which is really cool. In fact, I tell you what, instead of wasting your time with that, let's do this. Let's see if I can pull this off. I haven't updated my 6 for a while, so it might not work, but let's bear with me for just 1 second. Let's see if I can open, I don't want 7, I want this one. I think this is it. Let's open 6. I think this is it. See if it will. Yeah, this is 6. It's expired. Boo. All right, never mind. I know. Shh. Let's see if 7 will run. So I just want to show you. The. I think these both might be expired because I don't use this machine very often. If it does work, I just want to show you Raytrace mode as to what's coming in 6 because it's cool. Yeah, this is expired too. Never mind. Worst demo ever. All right, never mind. Let's go back here. In version 6, though, there's cycles and Raytrace mode, which basically is an interactive renderer like Keyshot that's built right into the viewport. So over here, there'll be a pick for Raytrace mode, and it's essentially like having a constantly refining renderer like Keyshot or any of the other renderers that do that built in, and it actually is really pretty great. But let's throw a few materials on this. So render. Everybody's like running out the door now. You lied to me. All right, so let's put. I don't know if there's any stainless built in here, but let's see. There is. Doesn't look like it. Let's start with silver. I'm going to just drag this onto here, and then let's make a new material, and let's make this black, but let's make it with 100% reflectivity, which essentially is chrome, and that's going to go here, and here, and here. We don't have an environment in the scene, which is why it looks bad. Here, there, and this is a new material. Let's make this semi-transparent like that, and let's make it a little blue, not a lot blue, but a little blue. Not like it's going to sit on the couch and watch Netflix and eat ice cream for the next 4 days, but just like a little blue. And it looks like, oh, you know what? This isn't joined. Let's fix that. Let's join all that. There we go. Hang on, Houston. Oh, I've got two poly surfaces on top of each other. That just won't do. Let's get rid of this one. There we go. Now let's go back here. That's better. The gasket, let's do that. Another material. We'll do that one. Let's do that one a little gray. Maybe with a little warm to it. And we'll take its transparency up. Like that. All right. So that's all our material assignments. And if we go to rendered mode, we'll see those. And then I don't even know if we have a environment in Rhino 5, but let's see. Oh, we do. Look at that. Let's do automatic, and then we want to choose one. Looks like I need an image for that, but let's just throw this in the back. We'll just throw something in there so we can get some kind of reflection. And all right, so that gives us a little bit of something to reflect off of, right? If we don't have an environment, Chrome always looks terrible. And this silver, let's edit that a little bit to make it just a little less reflective. Let's back that off a little bit. There we go, something like that. And we'll just run a quick render. It's only going to be so great because we've got, you know, limited rendering stuff, but you can kind of see where we're going, right? So we've got our little stainless, and we've got this and that and the other thing. All right, now you'd obviously want a better background and all that stuff, and I kind of threw the rendering stuff at the last second, so I didn't have an environment prepared, but but you get the point, right? That's kind of what we're looking at. All right. Any questions on the modeling of this? Let's forget about the rendering stuff for a moment, shall we? Let's not get hung up over who killed who. Any questions on the modeling stuff? If not, 10:22, hour and 20 minutes. We're out. How many of you still with me? Oh, some. That's good. It's not empty. Great. All right. If you don't have any questions, we'll call it. Thank you for joining us. This was Getting Started Rhino for Mac, and I'm Kyle Houchins. We do these fairly often, so keep an eye on the discourse and the startup window when you launch Rhino. It usually gives information on that stuff, and that's about it. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for coming. Please come again. Tell other people. All that kind of stuff. Wonderful. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good afternoon. Bye.